How do you respond when your entire world just changed? I'm serious. Think about it for a moment. Weeks ago, you weren't even thinking about social distancing or practicing isolation. Now, how do we network? How do we grow our business? How do we stay connected? Furthermore, how can we be of service during this time? Join our host, Tony Grebmeier, and today's guests as they share their best practices and insights to help you navigate the waters ahead. Welcome to Networking Remote.
All right. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, I guess we're streaming in Facebook land and we're using some technology called Zoom behind the scenes. My name is Tony Grebmeier. Welcome to Networking Remote 2020. You know, just a few weeks ago, so many of us were gearing up for one of the biggest networking events of the year. And I was personally planning our own networking dinner, over 100 and some odd people coming to it, preparing our new networking magazine dedicated to sharing how to make the most of events and networking. Fast forward, all that got put on pause. And so I don't know many people that are out and about running around the world right now. Most people are stuck in their home, they're isolating, they are social distancing, they're making the most of their business and their life. And I thought to myself, what could I do with the connections that I have, but bring great content and great people together? So my name's Tony Grebmeier, and today we are joined by the CEO of Fully Accountable, Vinnie Fisher, also Amber Spears, the founder of East Fifth Avenue Affiliate Marketing, and Thomas McMahon, Senior Business Development Manager at ClickBank. Thank you all for joining us.
Thanks for having me, brother.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, this is awesome.
So I've been doing this on our morning calls Monday, Wednesday, and Friday with our teams. We just literally scream, I'm doing all right. And it just puts us in a place of like, hey, you know what? If you're not doing all right, I'll notice you didn't scream. So on the count of three, we're just going to go scream, I'm doing all right. 1, 2, 3. I'm doing all right.
I'm doing all right.
All right. So
Good.
welcome. Thank you so much for being here. And I think the real purpose for this, for anybody listening, is trying to figure out how to navigate the waters that we've all been thrown into. Kind of like feel like we've all been put in a life raft for most of us. And we're just trying to either look at the life raft and make sure there's no holes in it, or know that we're going in a direction. So at first, I think my question is to Amber, how are you doing in quarantine from just your level of like what you think quarantine's been like so far?
Oh, that's a great question. On a professional level, I've really appreciated the slowdown. I didn't realize, how challenging my schedule was until I wasn't in the grind of it, like wasn't getting crushed by it. I was looking at my schedule and I was like, oh my God, how did I pack so much in? I keynoted Affiliate Summit in Vegas. And before that I was in Boise, I was in Baltimore, I was with Thomas, I was going all around. And then after that, I was going to be in Cambodia, Vietnam, Laos, Australia for EO. And then we were going to come back to Baltimore. It was just crazy all the way up until Mimosa and then TNC. And then afterwards I had, I was talking at Paleo FX and it was crazy. Like I was going to be on the road again this year, another like 200 days. So I realized how unsustainable that is and how I've been in it for the last 5 years and really examining, does it make sense? I don't think so. After looking at it all, I'm not going to be traveling as extensively as I was. I do certainly miss so many people, and that's a huge part of my business. In fact, one of my 2 businesses is an in-person event, right? So, it just made me look at it again and say, do I need to go to, Affiliate Summit West every year? Or can I go every other year? Does it make sense for me to keep going to the event circuit, or does it make more sense for me to fly to Austin and spend time there when there's not a conference happening with some of my closest friends and clients and deepening the relationships there? So it's really caused me to kind of examine a lot of my travel schedule and get some clarity on it, and also be really grateful for the space that I have. Like we're rolling out a new project actually tomorrow that I've been wanting to roll out for 5 years, and we finally have the time to do it. And I'm excited about that. And on a personal level, like staying sane. You know, I'm working out, I'm snacking constantly. So there is a layer of stress underneath all of this. So I'm not gonna lie, like I'm definitely gonna have the quarantine 15 on the upswing for sure. But you know, it's like, yeah, I stay in habits and rituals that have served me for the last decade: meditation, exercise, walks, journaling, you know, just all the things that make me feel sane. And I think that because I have those practice and rituals, that's been helpful. And, you know, just looking at the status of my business, both businesses, and really having time to look at it with clarity instead of, you know, oh, I'm home for 3 days, so it's a sprint to finish all this stuff and answer all these emails, and then I'm back on the road, and it's like when I'm there I have to be present, and then I get back to my hotel and I'm like trying to frantically answer emails and like kick the can down the road. Like that's not there anymore, and I'm incredibly grateful.
Well, thank you. I think what you just shared was like a really simple way of looking at, like, we can get really, really busy doing things that make us happy. But then also when we get a chance to reflect and come back to it, we realize, wow, like maybe I could make some pivots and adjust a little bit, a few points in my schedule to kind of find some more clarity. So thank you very, very much for that. Yeah. Thomas, the same question for you. You know, how's quarantine been for you? How's Penelope? How's your wife? How's life for you in Boise?
It's definitely been an adjustment. It hasn't been the easiest pivot to like work from home life that I hoped it would have been, kind of thing. Like there's definitely been some tension with Kylie and I, right, in a relationship, just trying to figure out being stuck at home all the time, like kind of the stress around all the bad news going around and stuff like that. So the first week and a half, I'd say, was not rough, but it was just like a weird funk we were both kind of in. We seem to be in a better spot now, kind of figuring some things out. The plus side's right, there's a ton of time with Penelope. She turns 1 in a few weeks, so you know, she's an awesome time in her life. I'm just getting to spend way more time with her, which is amazing. Right, I can just pop upstairs at 5 and start cooking dinner, and our evening schedule is just so much better in that regard. And luckily I'm actually losing weight through this because I can actually go run more. I go on runs with Penelope and walks with Penelope all the time. So we can just pop out the door and kind of get exercise that way pretty easily. But it's weird. Like I was like, in a work sense, I've actually been like less engaged from a personal level, like networking and stuff like that online, which surprised me. I thought it'd be more. It's just been a kind of a weird shift to try to figure out how to work from home. I'm very like in it. I'm kind of just on the couch working, and then I'm out of it. And it's kind of trying to figure out what's, you know, I'm home. So there's not that chance to kind of like float online and network as much as I've been doing in the past. Like I was getting a lot of momentum on LinkedIn and Facebook and stuff like that. And that's kind of coasted down. I don't know why. It's kind of one of those weird things I was thinking about before jumping on here. But yeah.
I appreciate the transparency. And I know our next person, Vinnie's, you know, he's got a house filled with kids. And, you know, the one thing that I will say for myself, and I learned this from Vinnie, which has been super helpful for me, was to start looking at my travel and start making sure that I am staying home more. So I've been taking your advice, Vinnie. I've been home for the last month, every single day. So it's been really helpful. So thank you for the reminders of making sure that I spend more quality time at home. My wife really appreciates you. So next up is Vinnie. Welcome.
Hi, thanks. Hey, I actually wanted to jump on both two things that Amber and Thomas said, and then kind of run through the filter of what's going on for me personally. And, you know, for the Thomas part of it, like our home life, if we just took a micro bubble of the Fishers in the early days, post-Code Brown, but before teenagers, we homeschooled our kids. So for us, this is like kind of doing that all over again. And so also, I'm a big advocate of kind of having another workspace beyond just the office. And so I've got both of those. So our discipline of home is very similar. The stress of and the burden and the word lament that's going on for everything around the bubble of the internet community is where the heaviness of my heart sits. But interestingly, Amber made an amazing comment, and I love both Thomas and Amber. They're my friends. And so I'm so thankful that you picked this group for me to be with, because I'm with my friends. And I was thinking about what she said about going into events, and I'm an event hoe. I love going to I just love doing it. I actually know that I can be more effective being home and purposeful, but I just love people. I get energy off people, and I travel for some reasons that may not be even ROI measurable. And so when she said that, I'm like, oh. And then I thought for a few minutes and I wrote down that the highs and lows of business are real all the time. And that when I'm off and running, I'm probably hiding some of those highs and lows in the busyness of what's going on. But while I've been home, the highs and lows are still happening. And now I actually have been given the opportunity to have to confront those. And so one of them was like this morning, I woke up in this unusual feeling of like I wouldn't say frozen, but almost like quicksand, because like I found myself a little bit frozen to dream outside of the quarantine. Like I was having a hard time thinking beyond, like what happens May 4th, May 17th, like, and I found myself stuck right here. And I'm like, I actually have to deal with that. I don't get to jump on a plane and go to an event and hide from that emotion. I actually have to address that like right now, because that's a real thing that's going to continue. And so I'm thankful that like that's like this working on your business stuff that we all talk about. I think this time is requiring us to work on things like finding out inefficiencies in the model. And we run a service company, actually we run two, and we got to work on those inefficiencies, but also me addressing some of the highs and lows of a hard charging A player type person who runs the business. So I really appreciated Amber saying that, because I think that's going on more than I would have ever dealt with that, but for being required to, because we're in this environment lots of times because we just want to be, but I can leave it anytime I want to. Literally tomorrow, I will have been only out of our house once in the last 2 weeks, which is not what an extreme extrovert would ever do. Like I get energy off of people, and only so much of it comes off of video. I get it, but I'm like Thomas, I got to be around humans and suck the energy out of them.
Thanks. Yeah.
I also think, Thomas, I hear, like, I'm just picking up something from you talking, like, I want to acknowledge that it's really stressful to be a new father and to be home, thrown into an environment, working alongside your wife. I'm sure you're both talking on the phone, right? So you're fighting for space,
Right.
literally, and also to acknowledge, like, I'm very fortunate that my businesses, we basically at the beginning of last year, of 2018, we decided that we were going to start shifting to all virtual. So my team has a ton of experience. In fact, all of the recent hires have only ever worked virtually. So it's it's a ritual and a habit that we're used to. And I remember when I first started working virtually, like I literally almost got fired. And it's just because I'm a type A personality like Vinnie and the rest of us on the call, that I was like, oh my God, I better get my life together, because I was like messing around. Like I was like watching Netflix and taking my dogs on 3-hour walks and like ending my day, or like I just couldn't get a routine and a rhythm down. And then this was like 8 years ago, but like, it took me, I think, 6 months for me to like settle into something that worked. And part of it was getting a space in the house. I was working from like a small section of my living room, and I had to enforce very strict hours, on like what I was going to be doing. It took a while to get in the rhythm. And then for the last few years, I've had like, an office that's important to have. But I remember when I was living with my partner, before I moved, like, she was also on the phone all the time. And it was literally one of the reasons why we were like, I can't do this anymore. Like you're talking and I'm talking and I don't want to hear your voice. I had to hear it all day. I don't want to do it. It was like a lot of clashing. And like, I just want to acknowledge like what you're going through it's a lot, number one. And number two, like it takes a while to get into the rhythm, just like you're getting the rhythm of taking Penelope out and doing all that. Like it's going to take a while to get into the rhythm of your work and get into the rhythm of your new relationship, and like give yourself some grace for that, because it takes an adjustment. It's not going to, it's just all collapse on top of you at once. Right. And it's going to take some time to adjust.
And I'll I think that's wonderful advice. I'll actually add this, just about in time when you get used to it, you're going to go back to the office and miss all of the stuff that you're doing right now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, it really has been a blessing to be with them so much, kind of thing. It's just, figuring out that.
I have a question for you, Thomas, and then we'll move along. this is something that just came to me, and something that I got the other day from David Gonzalez when we did our first networking remote. We were kind of preparing for it. He says that him and his wife, they sat for 5 minutes, non-sexual, just looking at each other, just being with each other, and just talking like with their kind of energy, not their body or anything else, just letting their energy flow and trying to get connected, because it is difficult. It's huge transition. It's not that it's amazing, but my freshman kid, we cleaned out his dorm, or my wife and they did like a month ago, and now he's living in my basement, right? So now I have a 18-year-old kid that I said we're empty nesting, and I guess we're now practicing preparing for it again. He's in our basement. What'd you say?
You had to put clothes back on?
Yeah, it's just been interesting. Yeah, the nudist colony had to come to an end. So, but it's been one of these things that I've learned, and so Amber and I have been finding our points to connect. Mm-hmm. And it's difficult. It's not that, she came in the other day and she sat at the edge of my desk, our dining room table, and she says, I'm bored. And I'm like, so I go into fix it mode. I'm like, well, let me fix this thing. Yeah. What do you need? She's like, well, I want to go build something. And I'm like, all right. And then she tells me, and then at first I'm like, oh, really? You want to build that? I'm like, if I showed you and I could bring it in, she builds an amazing swinging like day bed outside. That's just going to be, she went online, found some plans, and built it in like 2.5 days. And what I realized was, watching my wife, is that she has an outlet. I'm just been thrown back in to run my business. I'm like, I changed scenery, but I'm still running my business, running a team, and making sure I have all these things going. So it's really, really important that we have little projects together. So last night, what did I do? I cleaned the toilets, and it made me realize that I still have the ability to do the little things that make everything work right in our house. And it just helped. And then I loved it. I thought you shared something really poetic, which is, it's not been easy. It's been a little difficult, and it's been uncomfortable. And that's a reminder for us as we walk through some of these questions today, is that that's the stuff that other people who are watching right now, it's not been easy for them either. And I wanted your counsel today to come and to help that person sitting on the edge, maybe trying to figure out, like, I don't have a lot of money coming in. My bank account is depleting, and I don't know if I'm going to go back to work, and, do I qualify for checks and stimulus and this and that? And they're just concerned. And you've been part of courses, or you run courses, and, people buy these things and they think, hey, I got this course. It's going to help me get out of debt. It's going to help me turn my idea into the next dream. But the reality is, for everybody right now, there's some form of isolation going on internally for every single person. And what would you say to somebody right now who maybe is stuck, who's isolating a little bit and not doing the things that they should be doing? Vinnie, let's start with you, and then we'll go to Amber, and we'll go to Thomas.
I think we can all be guilty of this. Like, you start getting into two things. One, a small story where you feel trapped in your isolation. And one of the first things that happens for me is something I hear you talk about all the time, and it's probably the basis of some of the stuff you're doing, is what are the little things, instead of being caught up in all the things that seem against you, what are the little things you're grateful for? What are the actual things that really are working? And I start meditating and saying those things out loud. Well, that will quickly remove me out of this really small trap. And then I do something very little right now. I text probably 15 to 20 different people a day. And if you're listening and you haven't been one of those yet, I apologize. But and I don't know. I just feel like I think in order to be a friend, in order to have one, you got to be one. In order to not be trapped, you got to do things to not be trapped. So what are some little steps you can take? But I notice when I'm grateful, I feel like empowered to go take some of those steps.
I love that. Last week we shared, for anybody interested in knowing, we shared Sean Stevenson had When Life Works list. You put 14 things down when your life is working, pick 4 of them, 5 of them from the list, and make sure you work on those. And that helped to really center people and help myself to remind myself, hey, exercise, like Amber was talking, meditation, eating right, doing the things that that work. You keep doing those things. Don't stop. That's going to be the negative spiral if you stop. So thank you for sharing that, Vinnie. Amber, what would you say?
Oh, I think first for me, it's like acknowledging that a lot of the feeling of isolation and anxiety comes from the collective unconscious. And like like all of us, right? Like so many of us are so freaked out and stressed out that sometimes like you need to sort your own emotions from what's going on, because we feel deeply each other. Like no matter whether we're in the same room or not, this is a worldwide conversation. And so I think the first thing is to like tap in. It's like, am I picking up and holding and carrying the feelings of anxiety and stress from the collective, number one? Or is this something that's affecting me primarily? Like, is it my anxiety and fear, right? Because I've had to sort through this. I feel like, you know, in general, I struggle with depression, anxiety. I'm really open about that. And the reason why I have bulletproof routines is because I don't take antidepressants, right? It's not like a badge of honor. They just didn't work for me. They didn't work well. So what does work well is therapy and moving my body and like having a supportive group, and, you know, people that are close to me know like, hey, you're going into a blue season, right? Which means like I'm withdrawing, I'm isolating, you know, I'm snapping, like I'm having a lot of fear, I'm spinning and I'm spiraling. So I'm fortunate that this is my time. Like I am a great leader in a crisis because I come from a lot of trauma. So like this type of thing, I'm very good at. And I acknowledge that and I step into leadership and to serving. Like we're doing more trainings for free than we've ever done. We're having hundreds of people show up. We're giving value. And when I'm done with those, I'm exhausted and I need to self-isolate and just like recharge because I'm giving, but like it feels good to give. And I think it's just tapping in constantly. Like, am I picking up my client's fear? Am I picking up my family's fear? And what of this is mine? And then remembering that, like, you know, action beats meditation, right? Like action's going to beat everything else. It beats stagnation, and then being really clear on like what actions to take. Because I think as entrepreneurs, our immediate instinct is to like, I'm just going to go do this. I'm just going to build, work on my stuff. And it's like, okay, well, what out of all of this makes the most sense to actually work on? That's going to increase your leadership, increase your reach, increase like your confidence, increase the revenue of the business, and it's just not work. So it's a roundabout way of saying like, first tap in. When I feel isolated, am I really? You know, when is the last time I talked to the people that I care about? Have I been doing my routines? Am I isolating from myself because I haven't been taking care of myself? Ask for help if you need it. Mentors, family, etc. Like this is not the time to self-isolate unless you really need it, unless you really feel like that's what's going to bring you more joy and more peace. And then to examine like what you're doing, you know, because I think a lot of anxiety comes from too, like just feeling like you're spinning your wheels and not really getting, you know, momentum in anything that doesn't feel good for anybody. So really examining what you're doing with intention, I think is really important at this time. And it's something I'm working hard to do every single day with myself and my team.
Wow, there's a lot to unpack there. So I'm going to come back and then share some collective thoughts. Wow, Thomas.
Yeah, so I follow a lot of like different like sales, entrepreneurship forums, subreddits, kind of different groups online and stuff. And there's this hustle and grind mentality that's always in those, right? And that seems to be tripled
I've never
up.
seen that, Thomas.
Right? Yeah, it's weird. Yeah, and that seems to be doubling down or tripling down right now, right? Where it's like, hey, if you're not working on your side hustle, if you're not building your next new thing, learning a new skill, it's like it's almost like a shame thing where it's like you didn't lack the time, you just lacked the discipline or the focus. And to me, that's really toxic, right? Because I mean, it's especially right now when there's all this stress going around and potentially people losing jobs and income and, you know, even family members, right? If as this quarantine and this virus spreads, right? It's just take care of yourself first and stay healthy, right? It's kind of the Maslow hierarchy of needs, right? If you don't have your baseline and your foundation set to really build from, you can't build the next thing. Just kind of take care of yourself, like Amber was saying, Vinnie, right? Mentally, emotionally, physically, right? Do what you can to show up best for yourself first. And then you can kind of work on the next thing, whatever that is. You'll be a lot more aligned for it, right? So I think it's that kind of like acknowledging, like Amber said, this is a very stressful time and it's hard to go through right now, right? And that's okay to acknowledge that and kind of feel that. And if you can't do that next big thing right now, you're not failing, you're just taking care of yourself and kind of getting through this really weird time that we don't have a guide for, right? I mean, I'm only 30 and I haven't been through something like this, and people in their 60s and 70s and 80s have never been through something like this, right? This is completely unparalleled to world wars or, terrorist attacks and stuff like that. It's completely different. So give yourself some grace.
Yeah, and I think, Amber mentioned that word, and you just said that word, and I know Vinnie talks about that a lot too, is it's okay to not be okay. It's just not okay not to do something about it, right? Like if you feel deep down inside, like you're just not yourself and your routine's wrong, like one of the questions, I love to connect with, and anybody who knows me, you may send me a voicemail or you may decline me, is I'm somebody who needs to see you. So hearing your voice is awesome, but seeing your face is totally a different environment for me. It brings what I need, and one of my love languages is connection, right? And contribution. That's how I show up to the world. Those are the things that are really, really important for me. So when I am disconnected, my knee-jerk reaction is to pick up the phone and FaceTime with somebody just to connect, just so I feel somewhat normal, okay? Because I have not done well in isolation, right? Amber still asks, why are you going to Starbucks? I'm like, well, I just need to drive. Why do you need to drive? Like, part of my routine is off, right? Still riding my bike every day, taking walks, but then it snowed yesterday. And, it's like, I can make these things up in my head, but the reality is I need to offer myself grace and remind myself, just like what the stewardess or airline person comes over the loudspeaker and says, put on your oxygen mask first before you give it to others. Well, I'm really good at saying, hey, Vinnie, you want it? Hey, Amber, you want it? Thomas, you want it? And I'm over and I'm in Colorado, man, and I need the air. So I'm just reminded of the importance of making sure that I'm giving myself grace to be okay with not everything being perfect. And that is, for me, as an introvert, extrovert kind of entrepreneur, I can still go in the tunnel in between my two ears, and I can get locked there. So I'm grateful that I've built a network that has helped me to reach out, that checks in on me, says, hey, how are you doing? I'm good. And here's a question that I'd love to share with all of you today. What is your initial reaction when you ask somebody a question like, how are you doing? And they give you like their knee-jerk response, like, I'm good, like everything's great. What's your initial feedback, Thomas, when someone says to you, or you ask the question, how are you doing? They say, good. What is your initial kind of feedback? Like, what is the thing that you kind of process in your head?
Well, that's the go-to, right? Everyone just says, even before all this, oh, I'm good, right? I like to ask a more specific question. So just how you're doing, right? Kind of like getting them to think about right now, like, how are you doing through this? How are you doing this morning? How are you doing, or how is this thing going in your life or business, to get a little more specific, to get a better answer from them than just that default good. But the next thing is just like ask a follow-up, right? If they're just, oh, good, nice. So your family's healthy, everything's okay, right? Kind of go a layer deeper, or just, whatever that might be, or that, or just ask are you able to get outside still? Kind of stay sane that way. And, not really. Yeah. Then you can kind of connect on some sort of deeper little level there. That's not just the default. I'm good. Yeah. The funny thing, I haven't found that a lot of people respond good right now. Everyone wants to talk about their insanity, right? It's this weird collective thing. It's like probably when the Beatles were, blowing up, everyone related to that, where now everyone can relate to this and you can connect on it. So I haven't been getting that answer a whole lot, to be honest, right now. It's everyone wants to share kind of like what's happening right now and what their locality is doing and how crazy the grocery store is and what their mayor did, kind of thing that was stupid or something like that. So.
Thank you. Amber?
I think it's a great question, because I echo Thomas's response, which is I'm grateful that this is happening, because I think people are starting to open up a lot more. And when you first said that, my initial thought was, I don't dig for everyone. Like, there are many people that when they tell me that they're good before this happened, right? So there's pre-quarantine and then, there's this, which is before, if someone told me I'm good, there are some people that I will poke at because I know I want to deepen that connection. And I know they're capable of going deeper. And there's some people that are not. And so it's also a part of understanding humans that, like, some people you're never going to get through, and those very same people that just normally we're going to hit that, I'm good, like, they're not going to share, they're not going to open up, they're the people you only ever see their wins, you never hear about their failures, right? Like, those people are starting to open up. and starting to give real glimpses of who they are that we've been all craving to see and understand and connect with more deeply. And so I think this is one of the things I'm so grateful for about what's happened. Like, today's a good day for me. This has been, since this happened, like I said, I thrive in times of chaos, probably because of my upbringing, but there are times where, like, it really affects me and it brings me down. And I know who I can turn to with this, like, type of fear in general. But now I feel like my pool of people I can talk to about my feelings has really opened up tremendously because of this. And I think we're all just like painting with new emotions on our emotion palette, because we're able to like access them better right now. When before it was like, oh, we had like, I'm good, I'm fine, I'm thriving, like, oh, I'm stressed but blessed, right? We had these little like things we could color with, and now we're coloring with a lot more emotions. And I think that's just such a blessing for all of us.
Thank you. Vinnie?
I love what both Amber and Thomas said. I thought of a couple things while they were talking, so it's good that you went with the smarter people first.
I always have to have a note taker on my show. I realized last week I had Jeremy. This week I've got you. So it's really important to have a note taker and let him ponder all the thoughts too.
Thank you, Vinnie.
I think a big theme that I've noticed with friends, clients, is we should take away from this. We need to go deeper, not wider, in our marketing practices and our relationships. But when I heard that question, the first thing that jumped out at me is when someone says, oh, they're good. For a long time, I used to be bothered by their lack of transparency. But if I'm going to be honest, I have to evaluate my level of investment. Because if I really want to know more, I'll just ask more questions. But if I'm willing to just accept their first answer, then is my investment really in to model transparency and help that person learn how to use their words and put some category of language around feelings? Maybe they don't know how to do it. But if I just accept they're good, it's really more of an indictment of my level of investment in the relationship than it is theirs. And so I love what Amber was saying, like, people have added language. What I've noticed interesting though is probably more maybe because I can pay attention to the responses this way, is how people are compartmentalizing their answers. They're saying, I'm good at home, or work is going like this. Like, I found very, very compartmentalized answers more now than ever, because usually it's just, I'm good. Now it's, I'm good, like I'm still working, and that means like there's permission to ask a question of where they're not good. Like, it's an interesting thing, but I would encourage everyone to look at your own level of investment. Like, are you actually going deeper with the next question? Or did you really just ask the surface question? You weren't looking to go deeper with somebody. That's at least what I have to ask myself, because I think I'm guilty of going wider, not deeper often.
Mm-hmm.
No, I appreciate you three all answering. I think it's a super important thing, because, most people right now are picking up a phone and they're calling somebody they care about. On the scale for you, what's the longest distance phone call you've made?
I was on a call this morning with a guy from, what's today, Tuesday? All these days run together when you're working like this. Yesterday morning with a guy from Thailand. So I guess it was nighttime for him and it was morning for me.
That's awesome. What's the quarantine been like for him?
Oh, that's a great question. I was on his show. It sounded like the same. Like, I think we're all going through the same stuff, just in different places. It did make me think about how appreciative I was of our healthcare system and our responsibilities here, even though we can sit and have concerns about our level of our system. When you hear someone in a different system, I get really appreciative of how quickly accessible we are to the stuff we have. Interesting.
Amber, what would be your thought?
My farthest phone call is probably my clients from Singapore. So they started battling this before we did on that side of the world. And just hearing how they're doing. I'm talking to some of my friends that live in Barcelona and places like that too, that, are in the midst of a lockdown. It's just interesting to see how, everyone's taking it, and especially interesting to interact with like my friends who are completely alone, right? Like, they're in apartments or and houses, and they're single, you know, and they have no one in there. Like their mind frame is just so different. They really stick out to me. So if you're, you know, if you're listening to this and you know someone self-isolating alone, like I would highly recommend you should reach out to them, because I've noticed that their mental health and anxiety seems much higher, stressful as it is to be around other people, you know, in tight quarters, and that like you still have that human interaction. And I've just noticed that they seem the most distressed to me mentally and emotionally.
No, thank you. I've realized that a lot, that yeah, we're all going through it, but Vinnie brought up a good point. We're all just going through it a little differently. Everybody's not the same, right? So our friends in Italy, do you guys remember when you first noticed what was going on? The memes that were being shared like on social media and Facebook, like, I'm not going to get this, is crazy. And then the more the news has played into it, and the more, I mean, I just saw like one, maybe Vinnie knows a little bit about this too. Like some preacher, you know, who preached like 3 weeks ago, opened his doors, his whole congregation came in, like he died, passed from it. And then his wife now has COVID.
She's sick.
And, I mean,
I was teasing a friend of ours, Perry Belcher. I don't know if you guys remember the day that Governor Mike DeWine from Ohio came out. It was like one of the first guys to kind of close restaurants and everything. And I did a social post about that, kind of as I was like in general shock. And I don't know why it sticks out to me, but since he's our mutual friend to all of us, I'll tease him nationally here. Remember he put that big post, Vegas is never going to close.
Right. Yeah. I remember that.
And I was like, I was thinking about it when I was teasing him just the other day about this. Like, it's funny how we came out with these big position statements, and now people are having to acknowledge where they were at that moment as we keep unraveling this very interesting time in our life.
No, definitely. Thomas, you got the same question. The furthest distance phone call you've made, or FaceTime?
Probably, I mean, similar places. Australia is probably in that part of the world, and Ireland, Barcelona. Oh, there was one a little bit ago. It was probably a little bit before this kicked off, but around that time it was like Ukraine kind of area that was kind of kicking off. But yeah, I mean, everyone's, the funny part about all this is that people are a lot more accessible, right?
If they don't answer your call, you're like, you're not that busy. Come on.
You see the little get left on red kind of thing on the text or something. You're just like, okay, I guess you really aren't interested. But
I got totally shamed the other day for not answering a call. I was on one of these like town hall things with a bunch of companies, and the guy's like, "What? You can't pick up my call?" I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's exactly what's going on right now."
I know I've had to I know Tony, you tried to call me last week. It's like, I couldn't pick up the phone. I was putting Penelope down for a nap, and I had to tell them why. It's like, hey, yeah, I'm not just ignoring you because I know I'm home, but
you have to justify now why we can't do something, right?
Yeah, it's not just like, oh, I'm probably just busy. Yeah.
I just want to say thank you. We got some time left, but I just want to say thank you for the transparency. I really love when people are deep, and the connection is like, Vinnie knows this about me, and I think Thomas and Amber, hopefully you'll learn as well, I don't live in the weeds. I live in the soil deep down inside. And that's really where my heart lives. And that's where I come to understand people and realize that, I got a mother-in-law who is by herself in an apartment just down the road. I have my in-laws, my wife's dad and stepmom living in a place that's completely locked down from visitors coming. Basically, when I hear their story, they have good amenities, but it's like they get their food. They have like 3 meals at once delivered, and I kind of feel like prison, right? Like that's what I hear, right? Like we're doing this. My mom and her husband were having trouble they were going to go back to the UK here in a couple of weeks, and now they're staying stagnant in Las Vegas, and they're telling me about what they're doing and how they're adjusting. So I think the question that I really have on my mind is, how is your family outside of your current situation dealing with what everybody's going through? Like how's your family doing? Vinnie?
It's mixed. Like, I think if you ran down Deb's family and mine, I think what you said earlier is really true. I think in order to really have, I think, a balanced version of compassion and empathy, you have to recognize that we're all on this spectrum in a different place. Like, there are some people who are just in gridlock panic, and then there are other people who have some version of a tinfoil hat on, and there's everything in between. And depending on, whether I'm trying to advance my agenda or just love somebody with what they're at, I got to be careful of that. And so some of our families members are in like, put themselves in a bubble. Whether or not they're immune compromised, they're just afraid. And other family members are immune compromised and not acting like they have some concern. So both of those are real in my life, and I have to lovingly work with both of those situations.
Got you. Amber?
Thankfully, my family's healthy, my sisters, my mom, my new dad, my grandma, everyone's healthy. And everyone's like still employed. We've been keeping my grandma and my grandfather in quarantine basically, since like March 12th in Arizona. Like we're just like, listen, like, you guys are in your 80s. And I'd really appreciate it if you just stayed home. Like my grandma's a light of my life. So like I'm more concerned about her than anybody else. And anyone who knows me knows that she's like the most a mascot. She comes to all the events. She's like the cutest. So that was like my primary concern is like, how's grandma? How's she doing? And then just stepping into more of a leadership role with my family, like, walking them through things, letting them know everything's going to be okay. Like our business is changing, but our business is stable and we're able to make decisions not out of panic. And as the primary, my mother and I really, support our family in a huge way. Like, it's a huge blessing and it's a huge responsibility, and we're just making the best decisions that we can. And then, I consider our community our extended family, and our, some, like Vinny's saying, some of them are in extreme panic mode. Some of them are, head in the sand. This is not going to change anything. I don't need to change my marketing. I don't need to change anything that I'm doing. And then you have everything in between. So just kind of having conversations and supporting, where I can, and also recognizing and reminding people that like, this is something we've never seen before. Yes, I agree. And also there are similarities in this to what happens in normal business, which is there are cycles to everything. So like right now, there are some people, like especially people who rely entirely on live events. I was talking to Christy Harold, who's like someone in Unicorn Club. She has, her entire business it's an adult sport and social league. So, that revenue stream had like no one's outside playing sports. And so that's changed her whole business model, right? So some of us are deeply affected with this right away. And then others of us, are not, we're making like new decisions. And I think that's like, tapping into what's really going on and saying, do we need to change things? Do we need to support people? And just like stepping in and looking at our family and giving them what support we can, because we're going to get through this together, and to recognize that there's cycles to this. Like, I don't know a single nutraceutical company that's not crushing it right now. And I've known that preppers and survival offers and those people have been suffering and struggling for the last 3-4 years. Their business is booming right now. It's just like New Year's Eve. What happens around New Year's Eve? Weight loss, does really well. And PD and mindset starts to soar, right? Like this is a cycle. And yes, it's going to, I do think looking at the amount of unemployed people and what's happening, like this is going to be a cycle probably unlike we have seen, but also understanding in every cycle and in every, and in every massive panic, recession, or depression, that there's ethical opportunities that you can, capitalize on and you can lead through. And the word of the day, like pivot, right? Like I think all of us are pivoting in some way, but like which pivots really make sense, which pivots are in alignment with your DNA of your company, of yourself, which pivots are really going to serve your community. And that's kind of what I'm looking at, and also recognizing like this global pandemic, yes, is not anything like we've ever seen. And there are a lot of similarities that we can talk to our mentors about. Like my mentor, Chris Guerrero, he's been through 4 recessions right now. And like, he's guiding and leading and turning to people who, know about this stuff. Like that's kind of what I'm doing for like my extended family, is like checking in and seeing and reminding them like there are ethical opportunities in here. And, for the people who are in dire need of help because their business model has been upended, they're going to get more support. And it's the same thing with my family, right? In the ecosystem of my family, there are people that are spinning or thriving or, you know, concerned. And it's just about like being as clear-headed as possible and then removing myself when I'm not clear-headed anymore, because it's easy to get and to take on that weight and that pressure.
I'll tell you, I think, Amber, one of the things that's interesting about that is, like, you know, each of the people on this panel today, we're like thought leaders and leaders in our particular world of what we do. And people look to us and watch our behavior and look to us for an opinion. In times where you're not like closed in, you might take some of that for granted. You know, there's a lot of sheep out there right now. We need some shepherds who are talking about progress and helping people through panic and all these things. But your words, our words matter. And your words, and like that happens inside your family. You notice how like what happens in your community in our world of leadership, even our families, like, so what do you, like, I get this question, like, so what do you think is going to come out of the Economic Council next? Like somehow Steve Mnuchin and I are buddies. I'm supposed to know the answer to that question, but I think it's a glimpse into how we should be aware and reticent of the fact that people are always, you know, watching our actions and our words. And so with much is given, much is expected. This is a time where I'm hoping that the circle of leadership goes up and people recognize the burden that comes along with that and embrace it, right? Like what you're talking about, like do it, get out of the way, let some of that happen. But at the same time, don't get too far out of the way because they need us leading.
I love that. Hey, Thomas, I'll let you wrap, and then we're going to rapid fire some questions for the last 10 minutes today.
You know, we've been lucky that all of our family's doing pretty well so far. Like my middle sister, Claire, she's in San Francisco, which has been hit pretty hard. So she's just been full lockdown, kind of quarantine in her apartment for a while. And she had just started a new job. So that's been weird, just to join a new job and then just be first day. It was like first day of lockdown. So it was like, she's been full remote, just, yeah. My parents and youngest sister, they're up in rural North Idaho. So they're really easy. They've got like 9 acres on a mountain up there. So they're
Already.
Yeah. So they're just fine, staying remote up there, trying to figure out how to pick up groceries, you know, from an online checkout instead of going into the store and trying to figure out that big pivot and stuff like that. It's been good. My mom's a bit immune compromised and stuff. So she's just, you know, being careful and kind of staying at home, but she makes a lot of soap and having fun and going on hikes, and they're able to stay removed. And then Kylie's family's doing well. They're, we kind of had to convince my mother-in-law not to travel on a plane. It was like right before everything really kicked off. It was a lot of uncertainty. And luckily she was visiting her nephews in Indiana. Luckily she didn't get on the plane, but they drove instead and just kind of like powered through and didn't stop anywhere and just got there without seeing anybody and did the same coming back. So they've been being careful with that. And they were really remote out there too. So they've all been able to kind of stay pretty hunkered down and safe. So I've been very grateful for that so far.
Love it. I really want to say,
I want to ask you guys a question. Like, you know, Amber made a comment about, like, you know, there's similarities. You know, the interesting thing is, like, and Tony's really old, so I'm only kind of old, but, you know, having been through cycles like this, are some similarities. This one's interesting to me. I have a question. You know, this economic impact is going to happen first shot within like 45 days. Most other real economic impacts roll in over a period of time and roll back out. Have you guys like noticed the temperature of people? Because it's happened in such a shock basis that there's still a group of people who are like, you know, next week we're going to go out and like crush it, like all these amazing things, and like all this stuff's going to happen. Like, it's funny how, like, some of that I'm like, how do you think that's going to go? Well, let me watch the president's thing today, and if he melts down again, I'll let you know, but I'm not exactly sure. Like, it's a funny thing. This has got a different flavor to it.
It's weird. Yeah. It also is weird, like watching the market surge when like another 3 million people, you know, file for job, you know, for unemployment and stuff. And it's just like, there's this weird disconnect sometimes on what's pushing the economy and what's actually happening. Yeah. That's been hard for me to grasp.
I say all the news that you're watching, there's like a 48-hour delay.
Right. Yeah.
What's really going on in the world. Hey, so what I want to do for the last 10 minutes to give everybody some just valid, just impactful information that they can apply right now to their life, no matter what. I want to say thanks to Amber. She gave us the questions today. So Amber, you talked about pivot, opportunity, connection, cycle, grace, and mentors. So just want you guys to pull 3 from here and just kind of share about maybe something that you've done in your business, about pivoting, the opportunity maybe that you see right now for your business, how reaching out to people has brought you closer to people and connection, the cycle that we're in, like in my program, we always talk about this too shall pass. Nothing lasts forever. However, it's still this cycle that we're in. We're all dealing with it. Grace, how do you give yourself grace and show it to others? And then, who are you leaning on, mentors, coaches to help you? So Vinnie looks like he's taken amazing notes. So Vinnie, run first. You're on the clock for 3 minutes. You got to answer however you'd like. Pick 3 or so and go from there.
Well, I only wrote down grace, pivot, and mentor. So what are the other ones?
Go ahead.
Okay, cool. So I want to start with pivot. In basketball, that means to keep one foot in place and turn around while you're in place, because everything else looks like traveling. And so what I'm afraid of in the idea of pivot is that for some of us, including myself, pivot might look like a different perspective, turning around while a foot's in place. And so, for example, on our marketing team, I said this morning that maybe we need to shine a light on our higher level of our services and not try to shine a light by making the lower level stuff we do better. And so that's a pivot, as opposed to a travel would be like, we're going to get out of the fractional CFO business. And so I think some people need to travel. If they're, so to speak, in the live event business, they might need to do something different than pivot. They might need to start a whole new something, or hold still and hunker down. But I'm afraid that the word pivot is used quite often to mean travel, when in reality, pivot might just be a different perspective. So for us, looking at our business, this has given us times to shine a light on parts of our company that otherwise we wouldn't have when we were so busy in kind of abundant acquisition mode. So that's my start there. On grace, what's funny is I don't know many people who move as fast as I do. And I get annoyed with my kids when they don't listen at the first cadence of my ask them to do something. I sometimes give that wonderful expression of love to my wife, which isn't so great. But then I found myself doing that same thing with team. And during this time, because we're electronically I feel like I'm working more than when I wasn't electronic. And so this has given me an opportunity to maybe be practicing a little bit more grace with others and recognizing that maybe my expectation of return should be properly measured, because, grace is really unfavored merit, right? It's getting merit for something you don't actually deserve. And so if that's a true definition of grace, then maybe I should practice some more of giving people some benefit of the doubt. And so I've been thankful for that. And mentors, here's what jumped out when you said that word. All of us should have them. And I had a chip on my shoulder for so long not having them. I was the poor kid who wanted to prove I can come out of the dust. And so I'm thankful for that. But if you don't really know what that looks like, I'd encourage you to go onto your iPhone. I have it on the Facebook. I was looking to see it on Tony's thing. But go on. Who are your speed dial favorites? Are they not getting most of your attention? And if not, why not? Because those people are the closer to that circle of what a mentor would look like to you. The people who are supposed to be in that tightest part of your circle. So for me, my tightest circle should be getting the most of my attention. And instead of the outer rings of it right now. And that to me is closer to this idea of what mentors look like. And then the last part of that is, it's sometimes nice to get perspective from somebody who's a few steps ahead of the journey you're on. And if you don't have someone on that, then with great humility, raise your hand and see if you can find somebody who can place you with a perspective that's just a little bit ahead of where you're at.
Thank you. That is Vinnie Fisher from Fully Accountable, a great company and a dear friend. So thanks so much for coming on. Amber, you are up. You said them, so you can choose 3 and go for it and share. So
Thanks. I actually wrote down 3 words: pivot, amplification, and grace, because I think those are really resonating with me right now. And I think what you said, Vinnie, about pivoting for the basketball analogy is true. So I can tell you what we're doing in our business. Historically, our business has been a high ticket business. On our agency side, I like to say we're not expensive, we're the most expensive because we get the best results, right? So we don't take on very many clients on the agency side. In fact, we started downsizing it to take external clients and just doing partnership offers and our own offers this year. I've always wanted to choose more entrepreneurs. I've always wanted to reach more people. And our first offer is a $10,000 offer where we train other affiliate managers or, help companies add affiliate management or, partnership marketing as a revenue stream into their business. $10,000 for 3 months, $50,000 to have us come in and do a 2-day intensive, $150,000 to work with us for the year, right? So historically our offers are on a table for many businesses, right? So I've been wanting to do something different. I've been wanting, and the reason why I've been resistant to it is because I'm like, there's no way I can give so much value to people if I'm not in there, if I'm not working hard on them, if I don't have my hands on them, right? And I realized in this, when I just started jumping on lives and doing webinars and calling people that like have never been clients or people that used to be paying clients and are no longer, I tell them all the time, my dedication to you does not end because you stop paying me. My dedication to you is here forever. So like, I'm calling you to check in, what's going on, how can I help you? And even people that, have never been clients, hey, I was thinking about you, I thought about this, I saw your marketing, maybe you should think about trying this, or I want to introduce you to this person. And, I realized like, we need to pivot and serve more people because affiliate marketing is a recession-proof revenue stream. It's not based on algorithms, it's based on relationships. So how can we help people amplify that has been a big one, which you guys will see tomorrow. We're gonna unveil something that we've been working on for the last few months. I'm really excited about it. Thomas, I'm excited, right? So it's a pivot that we're making that's in addition to our high ticket stuff, right? And we're gonna keep serving that market and keep serving that market very well, while knowing that, there's another part that we can bring in that brings a lot of joy to my heart.
Love it.
So I'm really excited about that. And then the other thing is amplification. When we were talking, I was like, man, this just keeps coming up for me, this word, which is we keep amplifying the bad behaviors in our industry and ourselves during this crisis, just as we amplify the good things. And what I mean by that is when people give, historically, I'm terrible. When I reach a certain point, I get hundreds of text messages, Skype, Slacks, PMs a day. I reach a point because of my anxiety that I'm done. I don't care who you are. If you're my grandma, it doesn't matter. If you're a client, I'm done. I have nothing left to give. And so I'm not going to answer because I need to refill my cup. This thing has been, for someone like me, in a sense, like difficult because everyone expects you in general to be around all the time. And now because you're quarantined, like, you're suddenly more available. I'm sorry, but I'm working more than I've ever worked because I'm rolling out new stuff. I'm going the extra mile with old clients, current clients, past client. It doesn't matter who you are. I'm getting on the phone with you. I don't care what size business you are. If you need my help, I'm going to do it. So, I think we've in this hustle mentality. Like, oh, if you're hustling, I'm still closing clients and full and like, all this like this hustle thing. Like it's a bad behavior in our industry, and I'm seeing it amplified. And I'm also seeing the good ones, right? The core amplification of our best values, of our community, of us coming together, of us being transparent, of us helping each other. Like I'm seeing that amplification too. I'm seeing, sides of people I've never known, like how they lead as parents, how they lead in a disaster or a pandemic, right? Like we're seeing all this stuff. So I think amplification is important to look at and see what's serving me and what's not. Like my busyness behavior was amplified when it was removed because I'm like dying to go to the next thing, the next event, and that's removed, right? So just that idea of amplification, like what's really working and what's not serving us anymore is becoming more and more clear. And then as far as grace, I think that's the other part is like recognizing that we're gonna probably be more selfish than ever because we're so worried about our own selves and like things leak, right? Things leak out. Like I do have anxiety and like I might be on it with business, but there are certain times where I'm just so overwhelmed and someone close to me needs something or says something and I'm just like, what did you say? You know what I mean? Like, can't you see me here? Like trying to help all these people, like I'm so stressed out, right? Like And I have to give myself grace and just be like, oh my God, like, I've reached my end point here where I can be, and this is when I need to remove myself, and just like apologize and recognize like, these things happen. And people might not answer my phone call because they physically cannot talk anymore. They're emotionally, they're overwhelmed. Their business is failing. They're getting driven insane by their spouse, right? There's just a ton of reasons, and just giving people grace through this and yourself just as much, I think, is really important.
Thank you so much, Amber Spears, founder of the East Fifth Avenue Affiliate Marketing Company. And I just want to say it's awesome. I've gotten a chance to see you last year at the Click. I'll just say this, watching you stand up on stage and do your thing and just seeing who you are at ClickBank's event in Mexico. I think Vinnie was there, Thomas was there.
Yep.
We're just getting to see you in your element and you just thrive. I love it. Thank you so much for being here. The thing that I'm reminded of as we transition is the 95-year-old lady somewhere in the East who put up a sign outside of her door, basically a window saying, I need beer. And getting grace from, I think it was Coors Light, dropped off like 150 cans. And then the next sign she put it, like, thank you, basically, So I just,
is it the 95-year-old woman that made you think about Thomas because he's going next? Or,
I know Thomas likes beer and Amber transitions, so it's great, bro. I just know during these times, if you need something, say something. And I think that was part of the message that I got from Amber is like, this is the time where we got to rise up. Vinnie talked about leadership. Like, we all have the ability to lead. And even if you realize that you're like, oh, I don't have anybody to lead, I'm like, you have yourself. And I never want you to forget that. Bob Proctor said it best, this is the time where you need to stop being an extra in your own movie and take the lead. And it's really, really powerful. And I want to finish today with Thomas. And before we do that, I just say thank you for giving us an hour. Tons of comments. So please, after this is over, if you don't mind just jumping through the Facebook comments and just message. People took their time to watch, and it's been nice to have each and every one of you on. So Thomas, last question for you. Pick some out of that category that Amber threw out. She even added a new one. So if you want to go down the road,
amplify.
And if you want to put gratefulness for your wife cutting that big old messy beard and haircut, let's throw that in.
Yeah, that was good. You can't see the back. It's still, you need some work.
Is that a mullet growing?
It's just, there's not really a fade at all. It's all just one length. Yeah, that's interesting. No, pivoting is the big one, I think, for a lot of people right now. And same for me and ClickBank. I've been really impressed with how well ClickBank has pivoted to be fully remote. People are surprised to learn that ClickBank isn't remote, that we're all in-house in the office in Boise, 9 to 5 kind of thing. And it's always, ClickBank historically has been really resistant to kind of remote work and all that kind of stuff. But we've pivoted really well. Kelly Householder, the CEO that you all know, he's done a great job at communicating with the company, really upping his communication across different channels, from Slack to Zoom calls to kind of weekly email updates. Some really cool things they've done too, right? Like, it was ClickBank's birthday, a couple of weeks ago, and it's like a big party all together. Obviously, we couldn't do that, so they had a local creamery deliver ice cream, a couple pints of ice cream to everybody's house, kind of thing, cool. Right? And it's little things like that that remind you that you're part of a team and a family and a culture still, even if you're at home. And just the engagement on Slack channels and stuff has been really up, and it's been pretty cool to see. I've been pivoting personally just online a little more. I've taken the downtime I do have that I would normally be like playing volleyball or like golfing or something. And I've been building out like a personal site and kind of building that out. So getting what I've been kicking around for ages now. So actually implementing that and getting it live has been a lot of fun and feeling rewarding and feeling like I'm still having momentum, as well as all like the day-to-day stuff that we're still doing. And then trying to stay mindful of pivoting to get the new opportunities that are there from this, but also keeping a focus on the long-term effect of those opportunities has been big. A lot of people pivot right into the more dangerous marketing claims and stuff, which is pretty risky. You see the FTC issuing warning letters like crazy right now. So it's kind of not just picking up the low-hanging fruit, but the best fruit, which might not be low-hanging still. So that's been important for us, that I'm excited to do. Other one is cycle, right, which kind of is similar to pivot in my mind, but it's kind of and that ties into that, right? It's kind of being mindful of where this is going to go potentially, and how can we still add value in the short term and have something there and build and keep building that foundation. For me personally too, it's getting back. And like, I've done a terrible job. My sleep cycle has been way out of whack with this. It seems like I should go the other way, like without having to commute and stuff, but I'm up till midnight or 1 a.m. every night doing stuff and waking up and getting to work. It's just, yeah, it's been terrible. I'm trying to do a better job, even last night still. So that's been big for me. The other one is kind of that mentorship side. And this is more of a personal accountability thing for me too. And I'm sure a lot of people listening could probably relate, where I've always felt like desperate, like I need a mentor, right? But I don't want to burden someone, which is a weird juxtaposition to be in. I hate to be a burden to people. I just want to add value. And I feel like if someone's mentoring me, they're giving and I'm not really giving back in turn, right? I'm just taking, which is hard for me to relate to. And it's tough. Like right when Vinnie and I sit down for dinner, he's a great mentor for me and stuff like that. But it's always hard for me to like text him for things and like ask him for stuff. Like, I've been trying to do it a little more lateful, and you've been very responsive and super helpful with that kind of stuff. But in general, it's just tough. So I don't know what advice I have for people around that, other than to acknowledge that maybe, and just like have been transparent with people around that. People are super forthcoming and willing to help still. I just have to know who to be tactical with, who I'm asking, not favors for, but help with, right? So explain to people's strengths and not just trying to dump everything on one person. Right, getting mentorship from different things from different people.
And then, Thomas, you could give it, right? So I know you and I were talking about this. There's two things that, givers can sometimes be bad receivers, right? We got to learn how to receive. It's the ultimate other side of giving. Like, I became a better giver actually by one of my mentors calling me out on being a bad receiver. And then the other thing is like, you don't always have to be a mentor to like Andrew Carnegie. Like there's a teenage man in your town that needs your mentorship. Like there's an ability to stop and mentor like someone very local and help. And you'll be amazed how that will open up the idea of what really like kind of this pay it forward mentality looks like.
I want to say thank you to Thomas, Senior Business Development Manager at ClickBank. I want to be honorable of all of your time. I just wanted to come with a couple closing thoughts today. I'm better to have spent this last hour with you. That's the one thing that I realized, that sometimes David talked about it last week. Sometimes you go to an event and, I see Thomas and I give him a quick hug. I'm like, hey dude, let's catch up later. So awesome spending time with you. And, you go off and run your way, you do your thing. Amber, the same thing. We were super excited to be a part of everything that you got going on. And like, Vinnie, I'm like, dude, we usually do stuff together. And it's like, okay, so guess what we created? We created 1 hour or so of connection. We were able to add a ton of value to the world and give insight as thought leaders to help people today, maybe going through whatever it is that they're going through, how they're going through it. And you were able to drop wisdom, and hopefully you were able to take some wisdom from each guest today and hopefully unpack that into a deeper connection and a further your relationship. I only saw this as an opportunity to connect. I only saw this as an opportunity to come together, zero hidden initiative, put out some content to the world. Instead of sit idle, use the talents that I have. And that's the thing that I want to remind anybody listening today. Like, you've got God-given talents, and you're either leaning on those or running from them, and to find your voice. And that's what I put today. Instead of surviving, figure out what you can do to start thriving. Not to take away from what's going on in the world, but if you realize that today was your last day, how would you choose to live it? How would you live it? Would you live it feeling so sorry? Or would you pick up the phone and call somebody today that you haven't talked to? And I love Vinnie's analogy of just looking at your favorites. Pick somebody off of your favorites today. They probably need a phone call from you. I loved Amber saying, hey, you know what? My cup's full, at the beginning of the day, and at the end of the day, it's empty. And I loved what you were talking about, meditation and recentering yourself and making sure you give yourself grace. And I love that. And, Thomas, you kicked the show off today with, I think, an open heart and realizing that it's not all perfect. It's not all peaches and cream, as one of my good friends always calls it. It's sour sometimes. It's not what you thought it would be. But the reality is if you keep moving forward with community connection, we'll all get through this together, because I know that we're better for this. And so I just want to say thank you to each and every one of you.
Hey,
and I want to
promo the main highlight where Thomas said, look to old people like you for guidance.
No, he was using you because you're actually older. You've actually reached the 50 mark. But I did want to promo, and if you have any insight you can share, I have John Rulin from Giftology coming up Thursday. Talks about how to give without needing it to be a transactional thing. Sammy Shoebox Moses has been just repetitive in groups playing music and trying to do his part without getting shut down for playing music on stream social media. And then Ron Lynch, who out of the blue just got together and created IntelliHelp and just put a bunch of angels together and really making an impact in the world. So that's coming up on Thursday.
Let's just admit that thing went way bigger than he even imagined. That thing just blew up.
And what what's amazing is I think long after this, we have the ability to keep doing what he created. And
I think it's I'm so proud of him. I mean, he jumped on it, man, and everyone just followed suit because it just made total sense.
Really cool.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate it. There isn't this amazing end to the show other than we got to go. And this has been another edition of Networking Remote 2020. My name is Tony Grebmeier. On behalf of Vinnie Fisher, Amber Spears, and Thomas, no matter where you go, no matter what you do today, choose to make today the absolute best day of your life. All right.
Thanks for listening to the Networking Remote. Remember, you are not alone. Stay connected